Okay, so we are now in the second part of our genetics unit. We finished up our monohybrids, our kind of normal genetics, and now we're going to get into what we call special genetics. So it's going to be a little bit more complicated than the problems that you've done before, but still very easy if you pay attention. So today we're going to talk about sex linkage. And these are the things that you're going to be able to do after this. Understand the difference between sex-linked genes and autosomal genes, which is basically everything that's not sex-linked. Write the alleles for sex-linked genes appropriately when you do a Punnett square. Be able to do some sex-linked genetic problems. It's all really, really simple. So when we say sex-linked, we mean these are genes that are specifically carried on X chromosomes. And if we remember, X chromosomes, we have X and Y chromosomes, which determine the gender of the organism. These traits are usually recessive. And remember, females, to be female in humans, we have two copies of the X chromosome, one from our mom and one from our dad. So we get two alleles for sex-linked traits because we have two copies of the X chromosome, just like every other trait in our bodies. Males, on the other hand, they're XY, and they only inherit one X chromosome. They inherit it from mom. They got the Y from their dad, and that's what actually makes them male. So they only inherit one allele for sex-linked traits because they only have one X chromosome, and that's where sex-linked traits are located. And that's going to have some serious consequences. In a couple of minutes, we're going to talk about those consequences for these traits. And really, sex-linked recessive traits, and remember, recessive means you have to inherit generally two copies of it because you have the dominant or recessive. But in this case, recessive traits are more common in men when they're sex-linked because they only have one X chromosome. So they only get one shot to inherit the good or working copy of this trait. And if they inherit the faulty copy, they don't have another chance to get the good copy. Whereas females, we can inherit a bad copy of a gene on our X chromosome, but if we inherit the good copy or the working copy, then we're still okay. Males, you either get the good copy or you get the bad copy. That's pretty much it. And here's just a picture of the chromosome. So these are actually real pictures. It's a little bit fuzzy, I apologize. The X chromosome is really big. If you see this banding, it has lots and lots and lots of genes on it, lots of information on that X chromosome. And it's depicted a little bit better here with the banding so you can see. Look at all these genes. The Y chromosome, on the other hand, is really small. It doesn't have that many genes on it. Really, the purpose of the Y chromosome is to turn the organism into a male. So as fetuses are developing in utero, the default setting is actually female. So all fetuses start developing as female until at some point in the pregnancy, this little Y chromosome turns on and it starts, then, the body kicks in and says, oh, you're supposed to be a boy, and here's all the things that will make you a boy. That's literally all that exists on this Y chromosome. And comparatively, it has a lot less information than the X chromosome. So they are considered a pair, but they are not homologous. Like your chromosome 1 from mom and dad are homologous. Your chromosome 2 from mom and dad are homologous because they have the same information. But your X and Y chromosomes are not homologous. They don't carry the same information because, again, that Y chromosome is just all the genes to turn a boy into a boy and not really anything else. The X chromosome tells us how to be a girl, but it also carries other information that has nothing to do with sex determination. Okay, so sex-linked traits. Our little saying to remember this is sex is on the X. So they are located on the X chromosome. I do not even know an example where they would be located on the Y chromosome. So sex is on the X, always on that X chromosome. Dad gives the X chromosome to his daughters and Y chromosome to his sons. So if you're a boy, you inherited your Y chromosome from your dad. Mom, because females are XX, gives the X chromosome to her daughters and to her sons. So she's going to give her X chromosome to both because that's all she has to give. Dad is the one that has the difference. So X chromosomes for daughters for dad and Y chromosome for sons. And again, just one more time seeing that genotype, males are XY and females are XX. And we keep saying that because it's going to be important when you're looking at these Punnett squares. Okay, think about this. If a man inherits a sex-linked trait, and if we know that sex is on the X, which of his parents gave him that trait? Because he has two parents. If he inherits a sex-linked trait, which parent gave him that trait? If you were thinking mom, then you're correct because he got his X chromosome from his mom. If a female inherits a sex-linked trait, which parent gave, and that should say gave her the trait, that's a little bit of a formatting issue. So female inheriting a sex-linked trait, that's actually going to be either of her parents because both of them give her an X chromosome where those sex-linked traits are going to be carried. So she could inherit from either mom or dad, depending on who has the trait. And then last question, who, males or females, is most likely to inherit a sex-linked trait and why? So think about that for a second. If you're thinking males, then you're correct because they only inherit one X chromosome. So they either get the good copy of the gene, the one that's working, or they get the bad copy, the one that doesn't work. Whereas females get two chances to get that good copy, so it's much less likely that females get these sex-linked disorders. And here are some examples. Some of these are you can totally live with them, and some are they're really bad. So male pattern baldness is one, totally you can live with it, it's just a little bit embarrassing, and it's that very specific kind of baldness where you go bald on like the top of your head but not on the sides. Red-green color blindness, so the ability to perceive the entire spectrum of colors, and there are different types of color blindness, but this one is sex-linked. Hemophilia is not a good disorder to have. So basically, these people who have hemophilia have problems with blood clotting. So if they get hurt, like a normal person, their blood's going to clot and they're going to stop bleeding. A person with hemophilia, they can't do that. So even a minor injury actually becomes a lot worse. They have to go to the hospital and be given artificial clotting factors because they won't stop bleeding on their own. Muscular dystrophy is another example, and that's over time. It's degenerative muscle weakness, loss of muscle tissue, again, over time. So not something that you would want to get, but again, these are kind of a range. So we're going to do an example. In this one, you see the picture at the top, fruit flies. You probably have never looked at them up close, but they actually have lots of different traits, and scientists study them all the time. And the one trait that is sex-linked in fruit flies is eye color. So the normal eye color is this red color that you're seeing right here in this picture. And then the recessive eye color is this white eye color over here. So red is dominant. We represent that with a capital R, just like we did before with our regular monohybrids. Dominant gets the capital letter. And then the white eye color is recessive to red, so it's going to get lowercase r. So you're going to cross a white-eyed male with a red-eyed female. And you should notice, guys, that we don't just do R's this time. We have to, because we're going to have differences in who's affected, males or females, we have to put those sex chromosomes in here too. So the genotype for our white-eyed male would be X, little r, kind of as an exponent, showing that it's carried on that chromosome, and Y. We don't put anything on the Y because nothing exists. This gene literally does not exist on the Y chromosome. And his partner is a red-eyed female, and this female is actually homozygous dominant for this trait. So she has two copies of the dominant trait, so both of her X's carry the normal version of the gene. So I'm going to show you how we set up the Punnett square. So we put our parents on the outside, again, with the sex chromosomes. So just like this. And you should be writing down this example because this is one that people get a little bit tripped up on. So we have, and it doesn't matter, you could put the female along the side here and the male across the top, it absolutely does not matter as long as you are making sure you put your XX for your female and your XY for your male. So once you have that down, it's actually pretty easy to fill in the rest of the Punnett square. You do it like you normally do, where your boxes are going to intersect. Like this X is going to come down here and this X is going to come across. So I want you to take a minute, try to fill in the boxes, and then you're going to check your work with what I'm going to put up here. So I would pause the video because I'm going to give like 5 more seconds. Okay, so now we need to check our work. So this first corner, if this egg and this sperm meets, this is the offspring. Over here, we have this, here, and here. And again, these X's and Y's are going to be important because if you look at the questions to the side, it's actually going to ask about male and female offspring, and we have to be very careful about what we're looking at. So the first question is very generic. What percentage of offspring are likely to have red eyes? And that's any offspring. It doesn't matter male or female. And remember, this is a dominant recessive trait, so we only need one copy of that dominant gene in order to have the dominant trait of red eyes. And if I look, red eyes, because we have one big R, we have one big R, red eyes, big R, red eyes, big R, red eyes. So it's going to be 100% of the offspring are likely to have red eyes. What percentage of male offspring are likely to have red eyes? So in that, we're going to actually ignore these 2 boxes right here. You're going to ignore the females. So it's not out of 4 anymore. It's only going to be out of 2. So if I just look at the males, only the X and the Y, what percentage of male offspring are likely to have red eyes? This one is easy because it's 100%, because both of those males are the same. And then what percentage of female offspring are carriers? Now that's a different word. So carrier means that the females don't have the trait. They don't express the trait themselves, but they could pass it on to their offspring. It is literally just a fancier way of saying what percentage of the females are heterozygous for this trait. And if you look, both of these females, X big R, X little r, X big R, X little r, they are heterozygous, so 100%. So again, carrier, it just means heterozygous. And if you're thinking about it, males for sex-linked traits cannot be carriers because they either have the disorder or they have the normal gene. They don't carry it. They can't be heterozygous for this because they only inherit one copy to begin with. All right, here's another example that I want you to try. So you're going to cross a white-eyed male and a heterozygous red-eyed female. So we're changing the female a little bit. And this, guys, this R should be an exponent just like before. So I want you to take a moment and try to do this and then come back and check your work. All right, let's see how you did. So here's our female, X big R, X little r, and our male, X little r, Y. Remember, nothing on that Y chromosome because sex is on the X. And here are the offspring, or the possible combinations for the offspring. All right, so we have a female who is heterozygous. Ooh, here, that's new. So we have X little r, X little r. We have a male right there and another male. So what percentage of our offspring, again, doesn't matter the gender, are likely to have red eyes? So if you look, it should be 50%. So these guys over here, because they at least have one copy of that dominant gene, that normal gene. What percentage of the male offspring are likely to have red eyes? So remember, ignore those females. These 2 boxes for these purposes do not exist. So the males with red eyes, that's actually only going to be this one over here. So that's 50% of the males, 1 out of 2. I have 2 boxes for my males, this one and this one. And then what percentage of female offspring are likely to have red eyes? That's going to be, again, if I ignore the males, don't even look at these 2 down here, it's again going to be 50%, just this corner. So just 1 out of 2 are going to have red eyes. So again, that's why we have to write these sex chromosomes. I have to write XX and XY, because if I didn't, if I just did big R, little r, then I wouldn't know what percentage of the male offspring were likely to have red eyes or what percentage of the female offspring were likely to have red eyes. I wouldn't be able to differentiate by gender. Okay, So let's try another one. I'm just going to put everything up so you can see it. We've seen this before. I kind of rearranged some slides, which is why it looks like this. So let's say color blindness is another sex-linked disorder. It is recessive. So if you get a dominant version of the color gene, right, you're normal. You see all the colors just like a normal person would. If you get the recessive version, represented by little e, you'd be colorblind. So for mom to be colorblind, she would have to be X little e, X little e. She would have to actually inherit 2 copies of that recessive trait, one on each of her X chromosomes. For dad to be colorblind, he would have to be X little e, Y. Okay, and here's just a fun, if you want to take a minute and do a color blindness test. It's fun to do in class. I don't know how it kind of works here, but you should, in each of these circles, be able to, if you are not colorblind, be able to actually see numbers in there. So if you take a minute, this one's always pretty easy. So this one's 25. Over here we have 56. This is 29, 8, 5, 6, and 45. So again, not all color blindnesses are the same. So we're talking about red-green color blindness. So you notice there are lots of greens and lots of reds here. And that's the difference. So you see the stoplight in the middle, what we would normally see, and then what someone with red-green color blindness is going to see. They're not really going to see a difference in that red up at the top and the green at the bottom. Okay. So here's just, again, genotypes for in-outs, just to reiterate. So a normal female, and that's a normal homozygous dominant female. She is 2 copies of that normal chromosome. A carrier female is just another way of saying heterozygous. And then a colorblind female has to inherit 2 copies, so she had to get one from mom and one from dad. A normal male gets 1 copy of the good gene on his X chromosome, and a colorblind male is going to inherit, unfortunately, that this recessive copy, this malfunctioning gene. So let's do a practice. Let's say mother is a carrier for colorblindness and father is colorblind. And you're going to have to describe the possible phenotypes for the children. So again, are they colorblind or are they not? What is it going to be? So take a minute, try to do that Punnett square as practice. Okay, let's check our work. So here are our parents. Mom's carrier, so she is not colorblind, but she carries the trait for colorblindness, so she could give it to her children. And then dad is colorblind, so we have to give him the recessive version of this gene. And here are the offspring. And so we're describing the possible phenotypes for the children. So what percentage of the children in general would be normal? That's going to be 50%. That means 50% chance that any child that they have could be colorblind. For the females, it's a 50-50 chance that they would have a colorblind girl and a 50-50 chance that they would have a colorblind boy because of how this kind of breaks out.